Hello and welcome to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host, Valentine St. Alban, a show where we go down deep into the rabbit hole. You can catch me every other Wednesday evening from 9 here on Peterborough FM and online. If you want to learn more about me, please visit my website at www.valentinesaintalban.co.uk. So it's the 29th of September 2011, and this is a special edition of Esoteric Discussions. This show is actually being pre-recorded, even though it is going out to you on the 5th of October. But I'm out of the country, so I've had to actually do the show a few days in advance. So it's Black History Month. October is the UK's month for Black History. And over the next two shows during the month of October, I'm going to be joined by two different guests who specialize in Black history, and we'll be talking about all things related. This is one of those arguments that people often use, but I use it from a different point of view. You know, it's that time of the year again when people who have an interest in Black history are formally allowed to talk about it. We have been given license to enjoy all things from Black culture by the government. I just think that's kind of funny myself. I think other people do as well. It is nice that we have, a month dedicated to Black history. But to be honest, it really is a bit silly, isn't it? I mean, probably in about 100 years' time, people from the future will be looking back at these years here, and they're just going to think that we're all a bit crazy, I mean, as the logic behind so many things makes really not very much sense. So, I personally love Black history, and I don't mind celebrating it any time of the year. But the problem I do have regarding Black History Month is that it keeps people separated in their small square boxes. Now, this is just my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion. But I have found over the years that it actually sometimes it can go against what the overall idea is trying to achieve by, sort of partitioning off 1 month, and everybody must be interested in Black history. And I do find that I think sometimes people are forced into it and they don't really understand exactly why they should be interested. And so that's sort of my argument with it. But, I have found that sometimes when you do say Black History Month, I mean, I think just the term black, or, all of a sudden it just makes a wall go up inside some people because it's an issue about color, and it can make people feel uncomfortable when we talk about the color of other people's skin. We have to get beyond that kind of ignorance within our own society and realize that Black history is a history that is inclusive of everybody. It's everybody's history. It's not just one color. It's not just for one group of people. It's everybody's history, because everybody lives in the same world and is having the same kind of experiences and, is experiencing the same kind of history. So, for example, we can't talk about the transatlantic slave trade without including people of all races, because everybody, as I just said, is included in this history. Black, white, Asian, we were all used during this time frame in various forms of slavery. White people were sold into slavery just as Black people were. I know people don't like to talk about these things, and our educational system is biased, so it prevents us learning these truths. But slavery from the 1500s to the 1900s didn't just occur amongst Black people. There was the transatlantic slave trade that sold African slaves to European nations, but there was also the white slave trade, where Europeans were being sold into slavery in the Middle East via the Ottoman Empire. So, and oh yeah, of course, we can't forget also, many Irish and Scottish people who fought against England in various uprisings when they were captured were sold into slavery in the colonies, which were in the Caribbean and also in America. So, that's obviously a very, very wide remit of different people. And of course, being an indentured servant, which the history books love to use to identify Europeans who found themselves working for a master in one of the various colonies, were also just as trapped into the system that gave them very little rights or respect. Actually, I find that the movement of white workers during the period of the slave trade was phenomenal. Not all Irish, Scottish, English, or Welsh people owned plantations and were rich. Many were the complete opposite and wanted to find a better life and were willing to take the risk and try their luck in one of the many colonies. So this thing that we are taught about people not traveling until the 20th century is completely false. Humans have always migrated looking for a better place to live with brighter opportunities and resources. Obviously it's basically part of our human nature. That's how we're wired. So now already, when I say it's Black History Month, you already have a different understanding. You can feel the inclusivity of everybody. So it's not just about one thing, it's about many things. And that's what's so wonderful about Black History Month. And when we do start engaging with the community, and when people do begin to open up and be part of this, they actually realize, wow, I didn't know these things. I wasn't taught these things in school. So, there are bad things and there are positive things when it comes to Black History Month. And hopefully, you can find the positive things as well. I've got a young kid outside screaming his head off. I don't know if you can hear him or not. Let's move along. I mean, if we wanted to learn our history as it truly was and not how it has been painted to be, a lot of ignorance and bigotry would be easier to combat. Because the bottom line is we all live in this world together, and when the powers that be can no longer keep us divided and conquer us using their usual tools, that is when we will be able to move forward as one. So during the month of October, I will be dedicating my 2 shows to this exciting history, and we certainly will not be able to cover every aspect of Black history, because it is a very involved subject area, but my plan is to introduce some themes to you in a bite-sized kind of way, and hopefully you might learn something new. So, just to let you know as well, I'm going to be giving a talk on the 26th of October at the Central Library here in Peterborough at 7 p.m. It's called Black History, Black Heroes, and I will be introducing a few themes about Black history. It's free, so you don't have to pay. And if you're in the neighbourhood, please do pop in. Peterborough Central Library usually puts on a small display in the library for Black History Month, but they never organise talks, well, they never have in the past. So this is going to be something quite new. So hopefully it will go well. So tonight I'm going to be joined by best-selling author and history teacher Dan Linden, who will be talking about Walter Toll, one of England's first black footballers. Walter Toll is remembered for being one of the first black footballers alongside Andrew Watson, who played for Scotland in the late 1800s, and Arthur Wharton, who was a goalkeeper for Darlington. And, Toll left a great legacy, and he is certainly remembered as being a pioneer and one who opened the door for other black footballers to play the game in this country. He was also England's first black military officer in the British Army during the First World War. So I think you're going to find our discussion that we have tonight very interesting. But before we begin our interview for tonight, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to be doing a musical tribute. I've got a couple of things lined up for my musical tributes this evening. So, you know, of course, as it's Black History Month, I can't think of anyone better to kick it off with. It has to be Jimi Hendrix, of course. Now, a lot of people would argue that Elvis Presley is the king of rock and roll. Elvis was the king of white rock and roll, but of course, the problem was that black rock and roll was restricted amongst white audiences. So, the people behind Elvis often took the songs from these black artists and gave them to Elvis to sing, which became great big hits amongst, the mainstream audiences, which made him become a very, very famous man. Elvis himself was also very heavily influenced by gospel music and the soulful sound, but it was his management team that really sort of did that to the other black artists, and many of those black artists didn't make very much money and weren't given the kudos that they deserved. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel that Jimi Hendrix, he may not be the king of rock and roll, but he's certainly the godfather of rock and roll. And he evolved rock and roll to a whole new level with the undeniable electric guitar sound that only he could create. So he was definitely a genius of his time. And here's a bit of info about him, just in case you didn't know. Hendrix was born on the 27th of November 1942, which makes him a Sagittarius. And I think Hendrix embodies all of the positive aspects of a Sagittarian sun sign. He had an athletic build, he was quite philosophical and ahead of his time, and he really embodied the fiery element of Sagittarius by being daring and a trailblazer. Hendrix died in 1970 under, we could just say shady circumstances. I can certainly talk about the death of Hendrix in a different show. I think it falls very well under the umbrella of esoteric discussions. He is a member of the 27 Club. That's a very small club of exclusive famous names who have died at the age of 27. Kurt Cobain is one, Amy Winehouse is another. There's a few others as well. So, Hendrix basically, though, of course, will always be remembered for his original guitar playing and lyrics. So we're going to play a song. This is Voodoo Child from Jimi. And when we come back, I'll be joined by Dan Linden. So, hello and welcome back to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host, Valentine St. Aubin. That, of course, was Jimi Hendrix. It's one of my musical tributes tonight. Big lover of Hendrix, and wasn't that just fabulous? So, my guest tonight is Dan Linden. He's the author of Walter Toll, Footballer, Soldier, Hero, which is just one of his many books. And Dan is also an advanced skills teacher and head of history at Broomfield School in Enfield, North London. He is also a published textbook writer with a series of books on Black history for Hachette, and a best-selling book for young readers, which I've just introduced you to, which is about Walter Toll, and that was published by Collins Educational. He's a very, very busy man, and he's also the webmaster of Black History for Schools, which is the leading website in the UK for the teaching of Black and Asian British history. Dan has been on the management committee of the Black and Asian Studies Association for many years and is a fellow of the school's history project. So I'm just going to open up Dan's mic, make sure he's with us tonight.
Hi there.
Hi, Dan. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me this evening.
My pleasure.
I know that you're very, very busy. Just reading out your introduction is just already is just so many things that you've accomplished in your young life. So let's just get down to it. I mean, I'm always happy to see people that I know doing really well. And, you started off this year in a really big way with your latest book, Walter Toll, Footballer, Soldier and Hero, being published. Now, before we go into talking about the life of Walter Toll, which is a very interesting story to be told, let's just talk about your background because, you didn't get to listen to the introduction, but basically I was talking about how Black history isn't something that should just be celebrated 1 month out of 12. It's, the usual argument. It's something that is a part of everyone's history and should be embraced by people of all colors. And that certainly is the case with you, because if you don't mind me saying, you're not Black, you are white, and you have dedicated your whole life so far to teaching this history to others. So let's just talk about how you got started in this great subject area.
Well, I think really it started when I went to university. I went to Sussex University, and when I was there, the way the university was set up was had different schools of study, and I chose to study in the School of African and Asian Studies. And so that, for me, was a very significant turning point at quite a young age, and it led me into a kind of history which I hadn't really been exposed to at school, and really kind of triggered my fascination with multicultural history.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably another turning point was, maybe not a turning point, but something which has always been important to me, is that I was brought up in a very kind of egalitarian family, and from a very young age I remember my parents always, for example, hosted people from different backgrounds and cultures. We had a Ugandan Asian staying with us for many years, months or so, and we had we sponsored children in Africa through ActionAid, and so I guess from a very young age I was kind of socialized into being very tolerant and very accepting and very much into kind of a multicultural society. And so once I became old enough to start studying, and obviously when I became a teacher, those are the kind of issues that I wanted to bring into my teaching.
And, so, I mean, that's a great introduction that you've shared with us here this evening. So how did you find, when you went off and you qualified to become a teacher and, you decided that you'd like to do history, how did you find the establishment itself in terms of resources available for you to learn how to impart that in a classroom? Was it easy? Did you have to just basically sort of teach yourself in a sense? Were people open to the idea of bringing those things into these subjects into the classroom?
Well, I think that was the fundamental reason why I developed the Black History for Schools website, was because for many years there was very, very few resources available in schools. When I trained as a teacher in the early 90s, and there had been a lot of good work done in the kind of late 70s and early 80s in terms of anti-racist education, and the GLC and the Inner London Education Authority had done a lot of kind of pioneering work, but it was not very accessible. It wasn't certainly being published, and the kind of complaint that many teachers had at that time is, oh, I can't teach this kind of material because I don't know anything about it. I don't feel confident in teaching it. So when I designed the website and when I started to produce material for the website, it was with that kind of concern in mind, that this was a platform to provide resources free of charge, totally accessible, and that would enable anyone who wants to teach kind of multicultural history to be in a position to do that.
Yes, so you basically had to pull together resources yourself and make a decision to really dedicate your time and effort towards getting this information out to a wider audience, to students and to teachers. And I know that you've done a bit of training yourself to other teachers, and you've done teacher training courses where you're trying to share this knowledge. How have other teachers reacted? Are they because I'm not a teacher, so, and I don't live in the classroom. I have a different perspective as an outsider looking into the educational system. And I know my own experiences, like yourself, at in higher education. The information that you can learn about Black British history in general, colonial history, is still quite limited and from a certain point of view. So how did you find, how have you found other teachers in terms of their response to this information and maybe trying to get them to incorporate it into their own lesson plans?
Well, I think if I'm honest, I think the general reaction has been overwhelmingly positive and supportive and interested. I would say that the limit has come from my exposure has been to only a small circle and a very unrepresentative group of people in the kind of history teaching world. So yes, when I've done conferences or when I've gone to teacher training sessions, or I've kind of been involved in networking, then yeah, absolutely, people have said that they want to teach this kind of material, they're interested, they think it's important, so it has been very positive. But if you go outside of those kind of small circles, I think the pattern has not really changed in any way since you or I were at school. I think there's still a huge amount of work that needs to be done.
And would you say that's more of an institutional issue rather than it being personal amongst the teachers themselves?
I think, there has been institutional successes, I suppose, or kind of moves in the right direction.
Yes.
Certainly in 2007, 2008, the kind of changes to the national curriculum with people such as Martin Spafford, who's a Collier Fellow History teacher, who's also involved in the Black and Asian Studies Association. He was instrumental in getting diversity recognised in the national curriculum. Now, his interpretation of diversity, which was about specifically cultural and ethnic diversity, that has been diluted by people's interpretation of diversity, meaning generally people's different experiences of the past. So that has moved away from the original intention. So the institutional aim was clear, but unfortunately hasn't been followed through.
Well, that's actually disappointing to hear, because I remember back in 2000 and 2008 when we were having those celebrations with the bicentenary, everybody was really, happy that they had a breakthrough with the national curriculum and the body that governs it. I can't remember the name of the body at the moment. But what you're saying is they did make this change where they were going to include more of this Black and Asian British history into the curriculum, but what you're saying is it's now kind of fizzled out, has it? And they've diluted it into something other than that? Is that what's happening?
I think that's a fair reflection of what's happened. It has kind of been diluted, and I think even more worryingly is that as soon as the coalition government came into being, they scrapped the 2008 curriculum, and we are yet to hear what new direction the history curriculum is going to be moving in, but I think I can fairly confidently say that diversity is not at the top of Michael Gove's agenda for the history curriculum.
And it's a bit, it is all very sad, isn't it? The Liberal Democrats really should have more of a voice within this coalition, and they just don't have one. Yeah. So that's very depressing, because I started off the show saying that at the end of the day, this is all of our history. It doesn't have to be a color issue. And I know some people, as soon as they hear the terms black or white, a wall goes up, or they get afraid because we've been taught to fear color or to, even to discuss it. And it doesn't have to be a wall. What we're trying to do is basically help to break these barriers down. And the only way you're going to get those barriers broken down is if people are understanding the past, are understanding the history, know what has been before, so that we can all unite together for the future. So it is a sad state of affairs. So let me just move along. So we've talked about your past and how you got into all of this information, and we've talked about the state of the teaching the teaching world, and well, it's not really moving forward enough in terms of getting it into all of the classrooms. But you yourself have been doing a great job. You always have been. You've been doing so many things over the years. I lose track of all the different projects that you've been involved in. So let's talk about this latest book that you've written. It's not your first book. You have written other books, and this is your latest one. How did all of that come about? Because I know you were doing some work with Northampton Black History Northampton Black History Association, I believe that's what they're called, in Northampton, which is only up the road from Peterborough. So how did you get involved with Walter Toll in general, and then as we've now, as the years have gone by, you've developed and you've now written a book about him?
Well, my first kind of introduction to Walter did come through the Northamptonshire Black History Association, and I had been involved with them through the Black and Asian Studies Association. We had run an education conference at their campus in Northampton, which was a great success. And I think it was through that connection that I got in touch with the director there, and she asked me to work on an education pack about Walter Toll. So they gave me an archive, which I had access to, which was fantastic. It was all letters and newspaper prints and photos, and his will, letters to his brother, telegrams. It was a really lovely thing for a historian to get his hands on. And so that introduced me to Walter. And then the book came about. In a strange way, both of the kind of book commissions that I've had have been a little bit kind of sneaky on my behalf. I've had emails written to me kind of through my website from publishers saying, do I happen to know anyone who could write about black history, kind of thing. So, of course, I reply, well, actually, yes, I'm your man.
Yes.
So the Walter Tull came about in that way. They were looking for a primary school teacher or somebody who could write for primary schools. And I said, look, I'm sure I can manage to pitch it at the right kind of level. And so we kind of I worked on the book for about 4 months or so, just researching and writing the text. And really, really happy with the way it's ended. The illustrations in the book were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really brings the book to life as well. So it's a credit to the cartoonist.
And, it's also a positive thing to see the publishers looking for this information and offering as well, to try to get this type of information in print. Although Walter Tull, there have been a few resources written about him previously, haven't there? He's kind of one of those figures that some people have come across, and his name is becoming more and more known in our culture and our mainstream society.
Yeah. I mean, Phil Vasili has been the kind of hugely significant historian for Tull. He really pretty much uncovered the whole story and promoted Tull kind of endlessly for years, and very few people kind of picked up his story. So he really deserves a massive amount of credit for the work that he did on Tull. What I was fortunate in the one sense was that I was able to bring his story to a much younger age group. And the lovely thing about the book which I've written is that it's part of the Collins reading scheme. So it's really going into a large number of schools.
That's excellent, yeah. That's good. Has it been shortlisted for any book prizes yet?
Not yet. I mean, the book possibly, but
still early days. It only came out at the beginning of the year, didn't it?
Yeah. It came in January.
Yeah. So let's talk about Walter Tull then. So give us a bit of background about his life. Who was he, and what exactly did he do? Because he was quite an inspirational character.
Very much so. I mean, Tull was born in Folkestone in Kent around about the kind of late 1880s, and he was actually born on the same day as me. He was born on the 28th of April.
Oh, right,
and he, from a very young age, his mother had died by the age of about 7, and then by the age of about 9, his father had died as well. And he ended up being moved to a children's home in Bethnal Green. And while he was at the children's home, he was there with his older brother, Edward. And Tull began to play football in the playground, in the local team, and eventually was seen by a very good local amateur club who were Clapton. And he played for them for a number of years, did extremely well, kind of won various trophies, the London Cup and the local league, and was seen playing for Clapton by a scout for Tottenham. And Tottenham signed him up as a professional in 1909, and at that time he was the only black professional footballer in the English league. There was something like 600 players, and he was the only black player.
Mm-hmm.
So while he was playing for Tottenham, there was a very notorious incident where he was playing an away game in Bristol, and he was abused racially by the crowd down in Bristol, and this was a very, very traumatic experience for Walter, not surprisingly. It's the first recorded incident in the UK of racism from the football terraces, because the newspapers picked up the report and kind of talked about the language lower than Billingsgate, I think was the quote from one of the newspapers. So Tottenham didn't really know how to deal with this situation, and Tull ended up being dropped from the first team and put into the reserves, and languished there for a little while before he was signed by Northampton Town. And it was when he got to Northampton that really his career flourished. Made well over 100 appearances, scored a number of important goals, and became a really integral part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So by 1914, when the First World War broke out, Tull was actually thinking about joining Glasgow Rangers. His brother, who had been in the orphanage with him, had moved up to Glasgow, had been adopted by a white family, and was living there. So Walter was very close to him and wanted to move up to Glasgow. But when the war broke out, he decided that it was his patriotic duty to join the British Army, and so by December 1916 he joined the Footballers' Battalion of the Middlesex Regiment, which was made up entirely of both players, amateur and professional, and people involved in football in terms of management and administration and so on. So the reason why Tull is again a very significant pioneer was because after 2 years in the army he was invited to do the officer training course up in Scotland. Now at that time the kind of regulations of the army said that no Negro could take command of white troops.
Yeah.
And Tull, clearly, if he was in a position to get a officer's commission, would be given responsibility for taking command of white soldiers. And so he passed the officer training and became the first black officer to be given that position of authority and responsibility. And he led his men over the next 2 years through various different campaigns and was recommended for various medals, including the Military Cross.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, tragically, he was killed just before his 30th birthday in March 1918 in a small town called Bavoy in the Somme region.
Mm-hmm. So he died for his country, even though his country, there basically was a colour bar against, black troops and also holding positions of authority. But nevertheless, he broke through all of those restrictions and changed a few things, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it clearly broke that colour bar, was absolutely adored by his men. I mean, you only need to read some of the letters that was written by his fellow soldiers, the officers who were ranked above him, just talking about what an incredible man he was. And it is a tragedy that his spirit and his pioneering determination has never really been recognised. There was a campaign, again, Phil Vasili has been very involved in a campaign to get his Military Cross awarded posthumously, but there's little progress on that. And I think, yes, he is becoming more recognised, and that is a great thing. But wouldn't it be wonderful to have Walter Tull as, really known across the nation as a great kind of iconic figure?
Well, this is the thing. This is what you're trying to achieve, and this is what, because we've worked together in the past, this is what this is what we're trying to achieve, is trying to make stories like these become common knowledge. And what's the problem with a story like that? It's a great inspiration. Walter Tull, he lost both of his parents at a young age. So he had everything against him, and he overcame the adversity and made something of himself. I think that's a good story for anybody, from any background. So there's, as you were saying earlier in the interview, there's still such a lot of work to be done. And from what I understand, I think Phil Vasili, he's trying to get, or he was offered, or I'm not sure exactly all the particulars, but there's been talk about a movie being developed about Walter Tull. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, I only know kind of anecdotally and what I've kind of read, but yes, I mean, I think Phil's been trying for a number of years to try and get a film off the ground. There was a very good BBC film about Tull made a few years ago called Walter's War, which you can see, I think, on YouTube and places like that, which is, you know, a really good representation. I thought I show that with my students, and it's very well done. But again, you know, something like a film would really lift it to another level.
And what about, you know, statutes and things? Northampton, has there been anything erected in the Northampton area? Because he did, you know, spend a lot of time in Northampton. Do they have any statues of him up there, or in Tottenham?
They don't have a statue, but Northampton Football Club have actually been very, very good, I think, in recognising Tull. I believe that one of the roads leading up to the stadium is called Walter Tull Way. And on the outside of the stadium there is quite a large memorial which has been inscribed with words to recognise Tull's, recognise who he was and why he's such an important figure.
Oh,
so Northampton have been very good on that.
That's good.
Tottenham, on the other hand,
where it should be. Yeah.
Not quite there yet. But again, there is a campaign kind of working towards that.
And it's a bit of a sad situation because obviously Tottenham is such a integrated area, and it would really benefit from a role model like Tull, wouldn't it? So you know, well, we've covered. Very briefly, but we've covered a bit of Walter Tull tonight, and you've done a very good job just sort of highlighting a few things about his life and also about your own work as well. So, you know, any teachers and maybe that might be listening, we've got Black History Month during the month of October. How would you recommend them going about trying to get some of this information into the classrooms? We've got your website, and it's blackhistoryforschools.com, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, how can they go about trying to get this information and incorporate it, maybe do something in their own schools during this October?
Well, I mean, for example, the kind of things which I'm going to be working on with my students this year is some small competitions, for example. I'm kind of launching into very kind of high-tech stuff at the moment. We're using QR codes to get the students to kind of guess or answer the serious questions by using their iPhones to kind
right, yes, that's very good.
We're going to run various assemblies which will talk about the different kind of pioneers and key figures and key events. So I'll be leading some of those assemblies. So that's a relatively straightforward thing which a lot of teachers can do. The other thing as well is a brand new idea which is just in development at the moment, but we would be really, really interested in getting people to contribute to this, is that a friend of mine, another history teacher, and a friend of mine who's developing this, we're going to create a Black History app.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah.
So it's going to be a different person on each day, a different historical figure, and it would be fantastic if we could get young people to make the content, create the text, research the figure, and send in their 500 words or so about the figure that they've researched. And we'll create the app in 31 days of October, and we'll have a different person on each day.
Wow, that sounds amazing, Dan. It really does. And I like the use of, the technology that's out there and getting children inspired through what they already know, and getting them moving with their hands and downloading information that's useful and not just, music or something else that's just wasting their time. Yeah. So all very positive things. Well, I'd like to thank you for being a great guest with me here this evening. And okay, and just tell us the name of your book again and how they might be able to purchase a copy.
All of my books are on Amazon. You can just find anything to do. Walter Tull is a footballer, soldier, hero. And then if you Google my name, Dan Linden, you'll see all of the other books in my Black History series on African empires, civil rights, arts and communities, identity and culture, and lots more out there.
Very interesting. All right, Dan, thanks for being with me this evening, and I'm going to turn your mic off now.
All right.
Okay, take care.
Cheers. Bye.
So that was Dan Linden. He's such an inspirational character, isn't he? I mean, he's really dedicated his life, and it's still ongoing. He's only maybe about a year or two older than me, but I call myself relatively young, so he's young as well, and he's out there doing it, and maybe one person may not make a huge difference in the world, but one person can inspire quite a few people. So great stuff there. And it's also disappointing to hear that this information hasn't been picked up in the national curriculum as so many people had campaigned so tired. They put all of their energy trying to get the curriculum to identify this information and bring it into the classroom and embrace it. So that's sad to hear that that's not moved forward. But anyway, we're going to wrap up the show. We don't have very much time left. I want to continue with my musical tribute. I'm going to play another track from Jimi Hendrix, and this one is his song The Watchtower. And I'm going to take another break, and then we'll be back in just a second.
There must be some kind of way out of here, said a joker to the thief. There's too much confusion, I can't get no relief. Businessman there, drink my wine. Plowman, take my earth. None will level on the mine. Nobody of it is worth. Hey.
That's the beautiful sounds of Jimi Hendrix there with All Along the Watchtower. Love that song. And we're just going to wind down the show tonight with my last musical tribute for this evening. And it's Jill Scott Heron, who died earlier this year in May. Jill was born on the 1st of April 1949, and he was an Aries. He had an Aries sun sign, and he certainly was a pioneer and trendsetter of his day, and also had a very fiery, expressive type of personality, which you would expect to have with an Aries sun. And Jill is remembered for the musical fusion of jazz and soul and blues while using poetry and spoken word to emphasize his lyrical content. He is known as the godfather of hip-hop and rap, as his music focused on the political and social issues of his time. Believe it or not, rap in its early days was very political. It's completely not now, but obviously that was made. They made sure they stamped that out, and all you get now is women and cars and bling. But back in the day, it was an art form, and it was a way that people were able to express, concerns and thoughts of their time. So here is one of his most known tracks. It's called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," and this song was written in a time where there was no such thing as social media. We can now say that the revolution will be televised. We've seen that with the Arab uprising and everybody using their cell phones and downloading clips and things to YouTube and trying to share information about what is going on out there. But back in the day, we were very isolated in terms of knowing about what's happening, and we'd have to go to the television to find out. And of course, as we know, the corporate media will only show you so many things, and they won't always show you the true and full picture. So the song was very poignant for the time, and was one of my favorite tracks. So enjoy, and I'll be back as soon as the song is finished.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Gil Scott Heron. My accomplices are, first from left to right, Eddie Knowles, a drummer for the Denny Zulu Dance Group, a drummer for the Simba Dancers, and a percussionist for a group called Black and Blues. The brother to my immediate left is Charlie Saunders of the Simba Dance Group and a former drummer for Loretta Porker. David Barnes, a singer for Black and Blues, will be heard later on in the evening. We'd like to do a poem for you called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," primarily because it won't be. You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for bid during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Mendel Rivers to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner. The revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on reports from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lights of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he had been saving for just the right occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so goddamn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally screwed Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news, and no pictures of Harry-armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, or Engelbert Humperdinck. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
So that was Jill Scott Heron with The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. What a beautiful song, huh? And, well, a lot of it is still relevant for the times that we're living in now. So that's it, guys. This is me signing off. I want to thank you for listening, and thank my guest Dan Linden for being on the show as well. I'll be back with another show. We're going to be continuing the theme of Black History Month. But until next time, keep your eyes on the stars.